people love them. They're ordering a lot of them, and we're having a good time with them. So.
And I'm going to let you, I know the individuals out there at KFNS land that are driving down the highway and byway or at home, they're saying, okay, Gary B, who are the guests here this evening? And I'm going to let you name for you.
All right, we have a couple of them. One of them is my father, Maxvill, who played with the Cardinals, obviously, in the 60s. And another one is the one to your left right here, which is he's kind of a crazy individual, but his name's Joe Cunningham. And we also have Don Shaw with us as well. So all ex-Cardinals, and they're here to have a good time and tell you a little story about themselves. So
I tell you, I'm so excited. I've been excited all week since we put this together.
I know you have, yeah.
They're saying they're going to be on sports radio, StL, and KFNS.
Yep.
And I even mentioned it to the station, KFNS, and they're going, "You're having who on the show?" I said, Maxvill, Cunningham, and didn't know about Mr. Shaw, but he's going to be joining us. So
yeah, my dad called in this afternoon. That was a little late edition, so it's awesome.
I love it.
He's a great guy and a friend of our family, and I'll turn over to these guys. Here's Joe right here. Let's let him get on. And
why don't you go ahead and do that again?
Thanks,
let's hear it again for Tim Maxvill here. Thank you, Tim. Wonderful promotion. And also a sponsor here, we have Steve Smith, who is part of Rumble Time Promotion. He puts on a great show. In fact, we're going to talk about some of the programs that he has. He's part of boxing as well as MMA, so we're going to be having a lot of information on that because there's a fight coming on, MMA fight coming on here at the end of the month over at Ameristar. We'll be talking more about that, but without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome former baseball Cardinal Joe Cunningham. You're welcome. Very good. I'm so excited about seeing you again, and I'll talk about that here in a second.
All right. Good to be here.
Well, it's great. Now, we'll talk a little bit about yourself, Joe, for individuals maybe that have not been familiar with your past with the St. Louis Baseball Cardinals.
Well, I've been with the Cardinals, I guess, almost my whole career. I played for the Cardinals, and of course I got traded to the White Sox for Minnie Minoso, and I got traded one more time to the Washington Senators for Lou Scarron. And then I went back to the Cardinals and managed in the minor leagues for 4 years. And then I went to the front office, and I replaced Mike Shannon when Mike went with Jack Buck. And I was director of sales for 15 years, and then became director of community relations. And then I took an early retirement package, but when I was in the community relations department, I designed a school program, Say No to Drugs, directed at elementary school children K through 8. And now we have 3 ex-ball players doing the program in the sports writing.
Right, and that is super, Joe Cunningham. Again, putting that program together and an illustrious career that you've had with the baseball Cardinals, as you mentioned, back in the 50s started. Now, first of all, let's talk about how did you even get involved with playing baseball? How did you find the Cardinals, or how did they find you?
Well, I'm from New Jersey, and I was playing high school baseball, and my coach asked a Cardinal scout if he'd give me a chance to play baseball. And I was not a prospect. And at that time, we had 32 farm clubs. And at that time, the first baseman for Johnson City got hurt. And so they sent me down to Johnson City. And that was, I was 17 years old, and that was the beginning of my career.
Beginning of your career. And basically, you played near the end when Stan Musial was still with the team.
Oh, I played with Stan for many years. In fact, I was the first baseman, and after my 54th season, Eddie Stinky decided to bring music in to play first base and try to shoot me out again. And then they asked me if I could play right field, so I learned to play right field for 5 years.
For 5 years. Now, I know you had changed your number back in those days. You were number 28 and also 15. What was the story about that?
Well, the infielders got certain numbers and the outfielders got certain numbers. And so when I went from 28 to 15, and then Tim McCarver, when I got traded, took my number.
I see. Now, with your years with the Cardinals there, you've had several years with the Cardinals, 54 to 61. What was your best year and the best memories with the St. Louis Baseball Cardinals?
Well, there were a couple of them. Breaking into the big leagues, my first 2 games, I had 3 home runs and 9 RBIs and had 2 home runs off of Warren Spahn. So that has to be one of my favorites. And made an all-star team at the right fielder and lost the batting championship in '59 to Henry Aaron. That was fun. That's about it.
Yeah, well, you have, I know your career average was 291, and I mean, that is sensational right there, just in itself, but basically what you've had is you've done a lot over the years with that, and in that '59 season, again, finishing second to Hank Aaron, that just had to make you feel so good.
Yeah, well, in the National League I hit 304, then the American League combined it was 291. I guess I didn't realize this until the end of my career, but I had a 413 on-base percentage. I didn't realize that was that good. I was proud of that one.
Now I noticed in your stats, Joe Cunningham, that you ended up scoring a lot of runs over the years with the Cardinals, the White Sox, and the Senators. Who were the major people that were driving you in as when you got on base?
Well, Kenny Boyer. Kenny Boyer was a real good hitter for us. In fact, I would have to say he was number one. He drove me in a lot of times. Yeah. And with the White Sox, Pete Ward was a pretty good hitter, and Al Smith, and I can't remember all of them.
There were a lot of them. We're speaking with Joe Cunningham. We're here at Sombreros, authentic Mexican cuisine and sports saloon here in St. Peters. If you want to get more information and actually see a picture of Joe Cunningham, go to my website, sportsradiostl.com. And right at the top of the page, you see Smoking Joe Cunningham's picture there at the top. How did you get the nickname Smoking Joe?
I was living with Don Blasingame at Gaslight Square, and Smoky Joe's Grecian Terrace, and he asked me in 1957 if I would change my nickname from Jersey Joe to Smoky Joe, and he'd give me rent, price, and all my meals price. So I went to Harry Carey, and I asked Harry Carey, do you mind calling me Smoky Joe? He never asked me why, and that's how I got the nickname. Not because I smoked the ball.
Well, you did smoke the ball. You did mention about your on-base percentage. Some of the other stats. 59 apparently was your best season in the majors, and that was with the Cardinals.
Yes. Well, 57, 58, 59 were real good years, and 60 wasn't bad. But you know, in those days, if you hit 280, that wasn't considered a good year.
Right.
And of course, I had a couple good years with the White Sox, and overall not bad.
Well, the number Joe Cunningham that stood out with me, you led the National League in on-base percentage in 1959 with 453. Now that had to, like you said at the time, you didn't really realize that.
No, and that put me up with Roger Hornsby and some of the big boys, but I didn't realize it until really later in my career.
Right. Now back in those days, did you guys fly first class on the Lee jets and everything? How did you guys travel?
No, when I first came up, we traveled by train. Then when the Dodgers and Giants moved to California, we flew by jet. And naturally, we didn't want to take a train from New York to California. But just first class. Cardinals are first class organization.
Yes, they are. Now, when you talk about the train, I know there was probably a lot of fun guys that were part of that group on the train. What kind of things that you could talk about? Type of things that you did on the train when you traveled a lot?
Well, you know, after a ball game, the train would leave at midnight, and you would eat on the train. And then you were supposed to sleep on the train, you know, when there's booths and so on. But after the game, there wasn't much going on the train after the ball game.
Right. Yeah. There's like you said, there's a lot of things that a lot of guys and your teammate at the time with the Cardinals, as I mentioned, 54 to 61, you were with the Cardinals. Who were you guys? Your teammate that you roomed with, I guess.
Yeah, my roommate was, well, I had quite a few roommates, and in those days there was two to a room, but Don Blasingame was one of my favorites. He married Walker Cooper's daughter, and Lenny McDaniel. They put him with some ministers, Lenny McDaniel and Jack Fasholes, and I don't remember the rest of them.
Yeah, well, that had to be a lot of fun, like you're saying, in there with guys like that just kind of cutting up, because again, the game, it was a kid's game naturally, baseball is, and you guys had a lot of fun doing that, but interacting with a lot of these, I imagine there was a lot of characters on the team.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. But I tell you, in those days, they were very close, the ball club. And on the road, after the ball game, you go out to eat at a certain restaurant. There might be 18 ball players eating together. Now they have room service. I played during good times. We had 32 farm clubs and 8 clubs of the American League and 8 in the National League, and the competition was quite difficult.
Right. Now, in those days, when you left baseball, as you mentioned, Washington Senators, you left in '66, and then you mentioned you were with the Cardinals doing different activities there. And I saw you at the ballpark quite often doing a lot of the activities. And as you mentioned, the Cardinals are our first-class organization. There was probably a lot of fun to work with those guys.
Well, one thing I did when I was director of sales, my old roommate, Jack Fashos, he's a Lutheran minister, asked me if he was a coach, asked me if I could play a ball game at their stadium. And I said, well, I don't know why not. And so we started letting high schools and colleges play a ball game before the college game and after the college game. And in April and May and September, our slowest months. And that proved very successful. And of course, we created the party rooms and some other programs which worked out well.
Very good, very good. You're listening to Sports Radio STL. I'm Gary B. I have the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Joe Cunningham here at Sombrero's Authentic Mexican Cuisine and Sports Saloon. If you're in the area of St. Peter's, McLean, and Jungerman, you need to make it over here. We have a couple more former baseball Cardinals that are going to be showing up here today that used to play back in the 50s and 60s and even 70s. So make sure you come on by here and 100 margaritas. And what did you have to eat here this evening, Joe?
I just had a fruit cocktail.
Fruit cocktail? They've got a lot of that. And now you were mentioning you were always with the ministers. Why do you think they always put you with ministers?
I don't know. Maybe because I did the gaslights there.
Well, I remember you. I know you don't remember me, but anyway, back when I was 7 years old, right across the street from Old Bush Stadium on Grand Avenue, Carter Carburetor was right there. And all the Cardinals used to go to a little bar right across the street. I don't know if you remember that little bar.
No, I didn't.
Well, you were in there, but you just happened to walk in with somebody my dad introduced me to. So you were one of, and I really enjoyed this. You were one of the first Cardinals that I ever met. Standing next to you, just looking how big you were out there. But again, fond memories with the Cardinals and the White Sox and the Senators. And what would you have done different in playing baseball? With the different teams?
I don't think I would have done anything different. I learned to become a better hitter. And if I didn't do that, I probably wouldn't have made the big leagues. And learning to hit and experience of hitting, you can make yourself a better hitter. But in those days, you just came up and did what you were told, and that was it. In fact, when I had a good year, half a year in 54, I had half the season, I had 280-something, 50-some home runs, and I was sent back to the minor leagues again. Of course, Musial came and played in first base, but no complaints.
No complaints at all. Now, naturally today, there's a coach for every position, and batting coaches. Mark McGuire, naturally the batting coach for the Cardinals. Who was an individual that you looked up to, or maybe gave you a few pointers back in those days?
Well, this is going to shock you. Nobody.
Okay.
We had a couple of, I forget who the hitting instructors were, that they didn't say too much to me, I had different stances when I hit because I was hitting 300, so what did they I can't remember anyone specific.
Okay, yeah. Back in those days, when you look back at the days with Musial, with Hank Aaron, and icons such as this, and naturally yourself being a part of that, that's really got to make you feel good and being a part of that era.
Well, playing the good changes and music and Boyer, and of course I have a great admiration for Stan McMahon, and he was just a Super Bowl player. And a little bit heavy. And the one thing about Stan that people didn't realize, he was running 180 pounds, 6 foot. He wasn't really a big guy. The ball was hitting nothing what he accomplished. Because he had great wrist because he had the cat-like stance. A wonderful person. I've never seen Stan do this. Routines and all that.
Yes, and I remember that too when he had his hotel over there off of by the airport. Just walk in there and he'd always greet people. And like I said, he always had an open handle. And so what is Joe Cunningham doing today?
I'm still working for the Cardinals and I'm working with children. We do the St. Louis drug program. We work with an elementary school. Kids K through the 8th grade. And we've been doing it now for over 25 years.
Now, how can people get more information, Joe Cunningham, on that?
Just call the Cardinal office and ask for community relations. Community relations and ask them about the St. Louis drug program.
Do they nowadays, do you have a fraternity that you guys get together that guys that played in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s?
Not much anymore. I used to participate in the game behind the fantasy camps. And we did that a lot for Baby Henry. And after that, not much.
During spring training, I know we're going to have a couple more former Cardinals. Dal Maxvill coming on our show here a little bit later, and also Don Shaw. And I know Dal Maxvill has a location down in St. Petersburg, Florida. Do you go to the spring training places in Florida or in Arizona?
No, I'm mainly staying out of the car, working with children, mainly in Missouri, and that's about it.
Okay, any mentoring towards any kids as far as helping them? Any pointers to them in baseball leagues?
My father told me one thing, hustle. And sometimes people would say I over-hustle, but that's what he taught me, is to hustle. And it did pay off.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Quite a career again. Joe Cunningham with the St. Louis Cardinals from 54 to 61. White Sox, Chicago White Sox 62 to 64, and then the Senators 64 to 66. And you had near the end of your career in a collision. You broke your collarbone.
Collision at first base. The first baseman, Charlie Dees, left his foot on top of the bag, and I took over his foot and broke a collarbone. And had surgery and came back and played the last month of the season.
That's the last month of the season. And it's got to be so much fun here today. Don Shaw, you guys had dinner here this evening with Dal Maxvill. Keep together with those guys right there and just kind of remember this.
Maxie and I get together. There's something about Maxie that people don't realize. He had a better feeling than Marty Arnold. And of course, he talked about Ozzy. But, he was playing, Gibson said, I want Maxie at shortstop in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning. So he's one of the finest shortstops I've ever seen.
Yeah, he had a great, his fielding averages, you mentioned, Joe Cunningham, was just incredible. And I know we've had him on our show here, Sports Radio, StL, in the past, and that's what he really relishes that particular part. Even though Ozzie Smith did have 13 gold gloves, but
well, you have to realize that Maxie played on dirt and grass, and Ozzie played on asphalt. And there is a big difference. And maybe you can ask her, and you can explain to me why. Because come July and August, the Old Bush Stadium, that field was hard as very well. And believe me, it was very difficult.
Well, I know Lou Brock had talked about that with his legs. He was in Chicago, as we all know, for a long time. He came to St. Louis, and he says his legs were hurting quite a bit because of the AstroTurf.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and with all that going on, naturally, a lot of individuals don't really understand that playing on grass every day versus the AstroTurf. But back in those days, it was all grass, as you mentioned. Even the infield was totally grass in some cases.
Yeah, that's right.
And what was the most beautiful park that you played in your career, Joe Cunningham?
Well, of course, I like Busch Stadium because I hit well at Busch Stadium, but I like Cincinnati. and San Francisco, all pretty nice parks. As long as the fences were really short.
Well, Cincinnati, you played at Crosby Field. Did you play right field at that time?
Yeah.
Okay, so what about that little, a lot of people don't remember that incline on right field in Cincinnati at Crosby Field.
And I was playing right field during those days too, and you had to learn to climb up the hills and catch a ball. I caught a number of balls on my hands.
But again, a lot of individuals don't realize that particular point of Crosby Field, but that was just like today in Houston, they have the incline in center field. I don't know why they do that.
From the left, maybe for the drainage.
Something like that. But and as far as your offensive ability, and what, like you said, you like the fences in tight. Besides Crosby Field and Busch Stadium, where was the good offensive production done usually?
Well, my best years were playing right there at Busch Stadium. For some reason, I could see the ball. I had good records there, and I hit well in Cincinnati.
Okay, well, very good, very good. Ladies and gentlemen, help me again thank Joe Cunningham for being up here this evening. Okay, very good. We appreciate Joe. We're going to be stepping away here for a couple of seconds here. You're listening to Sports Radio StL. We're live from Sombrero's Authentic Mexican Cuisine and Sports Saloon in St. Peters. Come on by. We have several other former baseball partners that are going to be here. I'm Gary B. Again, you're listening to Sports Radio StL on KFMS and KFMS.com.